Good morning, this is Robin Bieber on ChartTalk on the 24th of June at 6:45 in the morning London time. The chart in front of us is July RBOB. More of that in just a second. Yesterday, targets higher were hit on Brent, RBOB and Gasol. None of them were closed above, and the fact that all three of those contracts slipped back below those target levels indicates a slight loss of momentum. The next indicator of momentum are the 5-day moving averages. Yesterday, once again, for the fifth or sixth day in a row, all contracts held the 5-day moving averages. By the close, heat was only 3 points over. However, this morning, heat and Gasol are below. This in and of itself is not a major issue. Heat and Gasol rarely lead the complex, but the rest are above. The RBOB, Brent and WTI. We're going to go into a 5-day moving average testing day today, and if the fives fail, we will likely head lower to the 8-day moving averages. It's absolutely critical, and RBOB's 5-day comes in around 128.34. It's the most important 5-day moving average on the board. Watch it for guidance. Below there would spell trouble down to the 8-day moving average and a loss of momentum. Equally, its resistance at 130.72 and erstwhile target from yesterday is the most important resistance on the board. A failure at the 5-day would not kill the uptrend, far from it, but it would suggest it moves into correction mode down to the 8-day moving average. And bear in mind, we're still in the area I refer to as the gap zone, which is the danger zone left from the disastrous price action around the 6th, 9th of March, where gaps above were left. We're in amongst those gaps on most contracts, and this is going to create a lot of price volatility. We're seeing that now. July RBOB. Here's the most important resistance on the board. Its erstwhile target from yesterday, 130.72. If we move back over there today, the uptrend's momentum higher is reignited, and we're going probably higher to the area of probably 133.65, the 200-day moving average. It would drag the rest up with it. So as such, 130.72 is critical and the most important resistance on the board. At the same time, the most important 5-day moving average is RBOB's, and this is around 128.34. If RBOB gives up the ghost at the 5-day moving average, we've got a further correction lower due. The first phase of a correction lower is failing at the 5 and going down to the 8s, where one looks at it again and takes a rain check through the 5 to the 8. So that's techno logic, and if RBOB fails at the 5, every contract is likely to start looking at its 8-day moving average as a dip 2 zone. So the 5-day moving average is absolutely critical and needs to be watched today. I repeat, 130.72 critical resistance, 128.34 critical support. It's the action at those two levels that will determine the next leg. Now, moving on to the crudes, WTI. It did pretty well. It got up to the key 50% correction level at 41.25 yesterday, having once again held its 5-day moving average. But it closed back below 40.69, not a good close, and it's now testing the 40.04 5-day moving average level. It's got to hold that level, so call it $40. If it doesn't, it's going to probably slide down to 39.30 area, the 8-day moving average. It's in the 5-day testing mode today. Watch that carefully. Upside would only be green lighted on a move and close over 41.25. It's got a still positive but slightly faltering stochastic. Brent hit its target higher last night to 43.41 and closed below. It's now in 5-day moving average testing mode at 42.40 area. This must hold, or it's likely going to dip down to 41.67. But any dip on the crudes is likely to be muted if RBOB is above its 5-day moving average at 128.34. If RBOB joins in the slightly potentially negative fun by being below the 5-day, then there's going to be some problems. And moving on to heating oil, it never quite got up to its target at 125.05, and once RBOB had slipped back below 130.72, that target was negated. It's slightly or just below its 5-day moving average at 120.68. If it can move back over there and rally a bit, nothing wrong with this contract. But at the moment, it's vulnerable to a dip down for about another 150 points to the 8-day moving average at 119.19. That 8-day must hold or it's going lower. It's got a negative stochastic. We'll borrow the arrow. There we go. It's got a negative or just negative stochastic. Gasol hit its target to the first line continuation CP at 369.0025 here on the left, and is slid below its 5-day moving average here on the right at around 362. Whilst below, it's vulnerable to a dip to the 8-day at around 354.50. Watch the 5-day very carefully. It has not got a negative stochastic yet. On balance, the key is that the trend is a little bit fatigued, but far from over. Only moves and closes below the 8-day moving averages would suggest that, but being below the 5-day suggests a dip to the 8 and a loss of momentum higher. Watch RBOB at 128.34, the 5-day moving average, and the key resistance at 130.72. The trend has been very resilient and extremely reliable. There's no reason to suppose that one morning's wobble is going to turn it around. It's very dangerous to play against it, particularly whilst RBOB is over the 5 and 8-day moving average. Watch RBOB very carefully. We've moved into the gap zone. It's a hugely dangerous area, so don't be surprised by some erratic action. And if we look at some back-end structure, Red Deck, TI pulling back to have a sniff at its 5-day moving average at 96. It nearly hit its target at minus 46 yesterday. It's still in uptrend mode, but watch that 5-day moving average. Brent, absolutely the same, testing its 5-day moving average at minus 189. If that holds, it's still got minus 96 as the target higher. And if we look at the 60-minute charts, Brent is beginning to suggest that enough is enough overnight. We've had our dip and we're going to rally into the London morning. That's what that chart is suggesting, and the RBOB 60-minute is exactly the same, but a little too illiquid to draw too many conclusions. But it's suggesting that the overnight weakness is being absorbed, and the 5-day moving averages are going to hold, and we're going to push higher over the next 2 or 3 hours. Watch the 5-day moving averages, and in particular, watch RBOB today. That's all for today, folks. Good luck, good trading, and bon appetit.